A Legend of Zelda movie is something people have wanted for a long time. I've been seeing posts on the internet of people dreaming of a Studio Ghibli Zelda movie for years, and that demand was heightened, especially with all of the Ghibli inspiration clearly taken with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. And with the rumors of the Super Mario Bros. Movie reaching all the way back to 2017, I think most people understood that if we were to get a Zelda movie, it would be largely dependent on the success of the Mario movie. If Mario couldn't put butts in seats, then Zelda definitely wouldn't. Well, Mario did get people to the theater, a lot of people actually, and recently various news outlets have been reporting rumors of another Nintendo and Illumination partnership, this time focusing on bringing The Legend of Zelda to the big screen. And while this rumor has been debunked by the head of Illumination, I think it's still inevitable that a Zelda movie will happen, especially considering where the franchise is right now, both culturally and financially. Zelda has always been a major franchise for Nintendo, and I think that is the case now more than ever. The success of the Switch was built on the back of Breath of the Wild, and the sales figures for Tears of the Kingdom proved just how successful Breath of the Wild ultimately was. Even 5 years after that game, and in the twilight years of the Switch's life cycle, Tears of the Kingdom is pulling major numbers, and these amazing sales happening just after the release of one of the highest grossing animated movies of all time. Yeah, we're gonna get a Zelda movie. In this video, I want to discuss the various possibilities of what this movie could be like, from the studio producing it down to what the story could be. Right off the bat, we need to discuss who would be making this movie. For years, people have wanted a Studio Ghibli Legend of Zelda movie, and as amazing as that would be, if you really think this is going to happen in a million years, you are delusional. Studio Ghibli creates films that are either entirely original or adapted from books. They have never adapted a video game into film. The closest thing to it are the cutscenes from Ni no Kuni. That's it. Additionally, I would argue that the future of the studio is somewhat uncertain, with Miyazaki set to release his final film, and the movie before that not doing very well, to put it mildly. The end of Studio Ghibli could be very well around the corner, as much as that pains me to say it. And yes, while a Zelda film could revitalize the studio, there isn't really much of a precedent for it outside of the internet really wanting it to happen. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are clearly inspired by Studio Ghibli's films, but I think this is the closest we're going to get to Studio Ghibli leaving a mark on the Zelda franchise. Right now, Nintendo is strongly tied to Universal Studios. The Nintendo lands in Japan and Orlando have been pretty well received, and of course Illumination is owned by Universal. So then that's it, right? If we're going to get an animated Zelda movie, it would be made by Illumination, right? Well, Universal does own one other major animation studio, DreamWorks. DreamWorks as a studio has far more versatility with tone and style than Illumination. However, I don't see why Nintendo would part with Illumination given their proven success as a studio, especially with a Nintendo property. So as much as I would love to see DreamWorks' take on Hyrule, I don't think it's very likely. Ideally, I would love for Universal to select Cartoon Saloon to animate the film and then have Universal or Illumination distribute the film, similar to what DreamWorks did for Aardman films in the 2000s. But again, I don't think that's very likely. Okay, so let's say we're getting an Illumination Zelda movie. What kind of story will they do? Will they adapt something or come up with a completely original plot? We have to keep in mind that whatever they decide to do for a Zelda movie, they have to make it appeal to the largest demographic possible, including people who may not have played the games in years, new fans from the Switch era, and people who have never played the games at all. The Mario movie worked because Mario is one of the most popular IPs on the planet. Essentially, everyone knows the formula of a Mario game, who the characters are, and what the basic plot is. Mario has never really been a story-heavy series, at least in the mainline games. The Zelda games have always had some form of story, sometimes to varying degrees, but I think most people would agree with the idea that Zelda, as a game series, is more story-driven than Mario. That could potentially make the writing for a movie more easy. After all you have to do is adapt a story from the games, or use the major elements and plot points, right? Well, yes and no. On the one hand, adapting a story from an iconic game could be useful to establish a built-in audience, but an original story could allow for more creativity. Returning to that first option, I've seen quite a few people saying that if Illumination does the Zelda movie, it would work best in the style of Wind Waker, and yeah, I agree with this. I think Wind Waker's stylized and cartoony aesthetic more closely aligns with Illumination's in-house style. And as much as I love Wind Waker, I'm not sure if it's as recognizable to people who are not that invested in the Zelda franchise. In my mind, there are two games I think would have the largest influence on the movie: Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild. Ocarina of Time is one of the most iconic games of all time, and its reputation reaches far outside Zelda and even Nintendo fans. Additionally, the story of Ocarina is inherently cinematic. A young boy tasked with defeating an evil, returning to his homeland as an adult, finding it in ruin, and defeating the evil with the aid of a young woman he was friends with as a child. It's basically The Lion King, but not. It's iconic and gripping. It could work amazingly as a film if adapted properly. Now, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are what Zelda is to a large portion of newer fans, and for good reason, because they're amazing games. However, they would make terrible films. They have some of the weaker stories of the series and are more appealing in terms of gameplay and visuals. The former obviously can't be adapted for a movie, but the latter could work amazingly. If we can't have a 2D Zelda movie, animating it in this watercolor-like style, like something like The Last Wish for instance, could immediately pique interest if it looked like more than just a generic kids movie. I think it would be delusional to expect something on the level of Spider-Verse obviously, but I think Zelda as a series is one that demands a distinct style. Ultimately, the announcement of a Legend of Zelda movie is not a question of if, but when. I hope with this video I was able to illustrate some of the possibilities for what that film could hopefully be like. I want to be optimistic. After all, Miyamoto was very involved with the Mario movie, so it stands to reason that the Zelda devs would also be involved with a Zelda movie. Regardless, anything we get will be interesting to talk about. Anyway, I'm gonna go put another 100 hours into Tears of the Kingdom. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.